I started with the work of DOSBomb, actually. We had a spreadsheet that showed the origin address, and then it showed all the addresses that the origin address sent money to. So I first started looking at that, and I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting. This makes up about 50% of the tokens in circulation, roughly, right? Um, but like I started looking at all those addresses, and like there's like no activity. Like the tokens just sit in dormant addresses, and there's no buying of HEX, there's no selling of HEX, there's no transferring it, there's no staking, except there's 11 addresses that the origin address sent money to that are staking addresses. It makes up about 8 billion HEX that were staked, and those happen to be, if you look on Staker app, those addresses are either sharks or whales. But if you take the sum of all the addresses, you actually get a Poseidon, which means that centralized ownership is actually, if you think he doesn't stake, you'd be dead wrong. He's the only Poseidon in the network. When I say he, I mean whatever entity is centralized ownership, or entities, plural. We don't really know.
It's the function of the APY, so you don't get 75% APY. Okay. 38 is fine, right? Don't get greedy. Don't get greedy.
Yeah, exactly. So those are all the addresses that the origin address sent money to. But then somebody else suggested, and I think it was Starcode maybe, or I don't remember exactly, but I think Starcode was like, hey, you might want to look at the adoption amplifier. Like what kind of, look at some of the addresses that entered the adoption amplifier in the early days. So what I did was I started looking at I started with so you can go on hex.vision, and you could look at the addresses that entered the adoption amplifier with like fat stacks of Ethereum in the early days. And I started looking at those, and I noticed a pattern. I noticed that out of a huge set of addresses, we're talking like over 3,000 addresses, every address had the same behavior. Like it was almost like like an FBI, SEC, CIA type of forensic analysis, even though I have no background in that. It was just like, oh, let's see if we can. It wasn't, and I didn't even set out to do this. I just sort of stumbled into it. I started to link the addresses based on psychology, based on human behavior. Like all the activity in these addresses are the same. Therefore, it's probable that it's all like one entity. And the activity was simply this: they entered the adoption amplifier throughout the entire throughout the entire phase of the adoption amplifier with large stacks of Ethereum, and the stacks were also smaller as well. But they entered in, they staked right before big payday for a few days. They ended the stake, and then all the tokens just sit dormant in these addresses. There's literally no activity at a few days after big payday. There's no staking, there's no end staking, there's no providing liquidity, there's no transferring, there's no buying, there's no selling, there's nothing. They're literally just sitting there. There's nothing. And these addresses, there's over 3,000 of them. And so when you take the cumulative effect of all the addresses to include the origin address, the PulseChain sacrifice address, which we know is also centrally owned, all the addresses that the origin address sent money to, and all the addresses that fall under the adoption amplifier category, you find that the origin address actually owns about 90, or I should say the controlling entity owns about 95.4% of all tokens in circulation. 87% of the entire network when you include staked plus liquid. But if we're just talking about what's in circulation, 95.4%. That is by the way, that is not a maximum number. That is a minimum number. That we're assumed, like, I wanted to play it safe. I did not attribute any addresses to centralized ownership where they were like liquidity providers, even though most likely the controlling entity was a liquidity provider at some point in time and or still might be.
Now I have a question. So you linked those staked accounts, right? You studied the adoption amplifier accounts based on the psychology of them basically staking as a surprise for big payday and then remaining dormant. Were there any other links that you made to the origin address for those?
That's as far as I went. Like that's about as deep as I went. If you go deeper, I'm sure at some point you would probably be able to find a link. I just never went further than that. Like to me, that was sufficient.
Do we know?
No, I did some more research. So,
do we know where the ETH went?
Yeah.
To bring it up. I know it's a sore subject, but
no,
I can tell you better than that. I can tell you better than that, actually.
That's the whole point of the adoption amplifier addresses, though. So, like, wherever the ETH came from, whether it was already owned by centralized ownership, or whether the controlling entity received ETH from the adoption amplifier itself and then re-entered with that to secure a dominant position, it actually is almost like an irrelevant question.
Correct.
Like, where did the ETH come from?
Agreed.
It doesn't really matter. But actually,
yes,
you know what I mean? Like,
yes, definitely. And I think it's a genius mechanism as well. I think it was a surprise that people weren't worried about that in the beginning, and I think OG hexagons and people who understand the goals of hex really don't get stuck on that. But as a mechanic, I think it's really genius the way that was set up to be able to get so much of the supply centralized.
It was a defense mechanism, Maddie, to make sure that no cataclysmic event happened. Because here's the thing, because I go more in depth in that. Not only they just sit there dormant, which actually quick math means that they're literally the function of your inflation. This is how and where your daily payout is coming from. Because if those hex, number one, didn't existed, the daily payout will be less than that. It is a dynamic number. Let me remind you all. If all of a sudden everything liquid start to get staked, we're going to start getting 2 hex per T share or less very fast. It needs to stay a dynamic 3.69 based on the liquid unstaked token. People keep forgetting that. So it looks big now. If all of a sudden we go to 50% stake, all of a sudden payout gets cut. So
yeah, and like I remember the first year it was actually less than 10%. Like the entire first year it was less than 10%.
Yes.
So the strategy was different. And there was no competitors.
Yep.
Correct.
It uses big payday as a catalyst to create more inflation, to then open it, leave it dormant so that our payout exploded. And this is how the compounding curves start. You get that initial bump, and then the arcing becomes. Because now, as they seek liquid, it's 3.69 of a bigger number that grows every day. And as this number gets bigger, the 3.69 gets bigger, and then it compounds. And then the emergency end state comes in, the new big payday money gets circulated out, and all these 3 billion, what I'm excited about, that's going to sit there liquid, that's going to be a function of future inflation. This is how we're going to be able to trend towards 7, 8, 9, 10 hex per T-share gradually, of course, unless there's a crazy adoption curve that comes in and suck it all in. But this is literally the function of the system. So it's a defense mechanism, and the system is saying only the true staker gets paid because those are the one getting that inflation. It's like the tokens gets put into a vault, and the vault is only paying the people who are staked. Like a drip.
If you recall too, like right around big payday, we literally were getting like I think we got like 1 hex per T share. Yeah. Like it was really low.
That day, yep.
Idea. Now
98% was staked, 99% that day.
Yeah,
we literally got the bare minimum, the 3.69. People are gonna go look at it.
Now we're getting like a base of like 5.7 hex per T share. But then when you start to add on all the emergency end stake penalties, like just a few days ago, I think we got like over 9 hex per T share. because there were so many emergency end state penalties.
And a compounding effect every time those emergency penalty comes in and the 50% goes into the OA. People need to understand again the function of the system. That's 50% that never gets staked, that will sit liquid, and that will be function of future inflation, so that your daily payout can remain the way it is. The reason why we are where we are and we're not trending down is because the adoption curve is matching the daily inflation. We're growing at a 3.69-ish, calibrated by the OA to make sure that the APY stays what it is. If too many people stake, you're going to see some emergency end stake, or you're going to see more stuff just being liberated to maintain the value proposition. There's a reason why Wells has that chart, one of my favorite charts, the EPS score, which is so stupid good, which is literally, you should not even be trading. You should just be like gobbling as much as you can. Because the earning per share, again, it takes you what is it? Well, 6 weeks, 8 weeks to double your money. Some stupid number like 0.17, right? So it's 17% of a month to double your money. That's insane. But that's
that's the craziest thing is like the OA is one of the best parts of HEX. Like that was one of the main reasons why I entered in the beginning. Like all the people that hate on HEX, like this is usually the main reason why they hate on it, but they don't understand. It's literally the opposite of what they think. It's like the most exciting thing about HEX, when you have one benevolent whale that is already a billionaire that will never sell and will do everything in their power to make the projects do good. It's literally one of the best parts about HEX, and all the control that it has, like the ability to adjust like the interest rates, right? Like in the beginning, it was less than 10%. I remember I wasn't getting shit back then. Exactly. I remember I was mad because like now everybody's getting like, there was not enough. I was getting like 8%.
Exactly.
And like but back then there was no competitors, so we didn't need to have too much. Then when all the competitors started coming out, now we went up to 40%. And the thing is, if a new competitor comes out, like it will require, like it's almost impossible for HEX to have a competitor, because they will need to have a guy like Richard behind to make all of this happen, right? And the guy will need to, not be attracted by money, right? He will have to already be successful. He'll have to figure out all the game mechanics that Richard figured out, and even if he does, well, Richard will be able to know, or the OA will be able to adjust the rate to higher levels than whatever.
You see, but that's what makes it next level, why it's so gangster good. Again, this is Quant Game, because it's a dynamic system to make sure that the APY is still making that value proposition, because people don't understand. And that's probably for the new person watching that may not be as aware about how this mechanism works. It's not only the fact that it used big payday as a event to create more inflation, so payout can start to accelerate, but also the fact that it's the true sacrifice. It doesn't get any better than that. It's owning the HEX. It's not selling. It's selling liquid, and it's allowing to be diluted. When you got billions diluted at 3.69, guys, let me do the math for you. That's millions of dollars paid. That's injury. You know how we talk about the bank stealing your money indirectly via inflation? The more you have in the bank, the more that stupid 2% is like you losing money, and Michael Saylor's going, oh my God. Imagine billions, and soon maybe trillions in years to come, sitting there being devalued at 3.69. That it doesn't get any more benevolent than that. And one more fucking thing, which is what I was focused on, it has an extra layer of safety. There is not even Ethereum in the wallet. Like it's like it just sits there, cannot be moved, cannot be hacked or whatever. There's no Ethereum. It just literally is like, all right, see ya. It's almost like this wallet doesn't exist. It just sits there.
It's like the opposite of the real world. Like over here, the centralized power is paying us.
Yep. And the more emergency end state comes in over time, as the price go up and people just can't, they trigger happy, the more gets deposited in that coffer. So therefore, the more gets diluted and the more valuable that daily payout will become over time, which is why if you're smart and understanding that share rate knows that, because the value proposition is getting better over time, therefore share rate accelerate, because that's why it's a dynamic system. There's almost no inflation, because as every time new inflation gets minted, it counterbalances with the share rate increase. So it's paying you on one end, but it punished on the other hand for those, once again, who are not playing the system the way they're supposed to. And that's why my tweets has been focusing on talking about that wisdom, because people out there trading, and then we're getting a 9.4 hex per payout per T-share. I mean, it was stupid. I was talking with Gunther, we were just like, what the hell just happened? I mean, that was like, that day was just insane.
Yeah,
so
great.
So
That's great.
Yeah, I've got two questions here. So Gunter, we're getting paid as if there was 10 or 12% of people staked, right? But what's the percentage of people who are staked that are not the OA or not centralized?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's roughly like a 2/3, 1/3 type of setup. So like out of all the hex that's owned by users, about 2/3 of that hex is staked, and the other third is liquid. Yeah, so it actually paints a different picture for you, completely different.
And people who just do the math just for fun. I'm gonna do that later, just to see the value that's being devalued, basically giving away. Because where's that inflation goes? We know it goes to the staker. So literally, the thing is just sitting there, inflating, losing millions of dollars, possibly billions soon, and it's paid to the staker class. Be like, hey, good job. You did what you said you're gonna do. Here's some free money. It doesn't get any better than that. It just and those who don't get punished.
Here's the thing too with the mechanics of that, right? So when we talk about the half that the OA gets when somebody emergency end stakes, the contract calculates what would have been paid out in interest had the thing gone to term, and half of that gets essentially burned because it goes to the OA, right? But the key thing about that is that happens right at that point.
Yep.
It's not sent into the future. So the emergency end stake has basically paid directly for immediate deflation of the total supply, of the circulating supply, right now. And that's huge.
Yeah,
and so future us. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So future us, I wanted to see if you could explain like what the origin address's optimum strategy is with staking, and maybe talk about how the exact percentage of the OA staking might actually be the biggest payout for the OA itself.
That's a very complex topic, and it needs to have simulations done with all kinds of different inputs to sort of get a feel for how it may or may not work out, depending on what happens. But in very, very simple terms, and this isn't really going to answer that question, that loaded question, but in very, very simple terms, if you imagine that one entity had all of the HEX and it was all staked, then that entity would get 3.69% per annum inflation sometime down the future when they ended that stake, right? And of course, HEX would be worthless because at the point, because there's a market of one.
Proposition is done.
Yeah. But if that entity had 95%, say, no, hang on, sorry, I missed a part. So yeah, it's 3.9. No, so if one entity, different scenario, owned all of the HEX and staked only 1% of it, they would still get the exact same amount of interest paid out because it's not split between the stakers and the non-stakers, right? So then, from that point of view, 95% of the total supply, staked 40%, 30%, 10%, whatever, is close to the same payout, interest payout as it would be if it was 100%. So yes, at the moment we see about 90% of that supply is being diluted, which is a mechanic that kind of speaks to a different cool feature. But anyway,
for the
but when those stakes do end, the 10% or whatever it is of the 95% ends, the interest paid will be close to what it would have been if they'd staked 60% or 80% or whatever. There'll be less dilution, but they're not really being harmed because the percentage of the supply is so high and so close to 100%. Not staking to the so-called optimal amount of 100% from a stake payout perspective doesn't really harm them very much. And so that's just one tiny component of how the whole thing is so brilliantly balanced, I think.
Yeah.
And the dilution that happens is important, so that as the market, I believe, so as the market matures, like in a decade's time or whatever, then the market can do what the market does without having to be babysitted quite so much.
And it does one more thing, which is really good, and I was said in the chat, which is good. It leaves the meat on the bone for the new guy, because like you perfectly said, if mathematically strategy for that entity or whatever, 60% is the same as 20 whatever percent. The beauty about the lower number is that in the grand scheme of things, when new people come in and buy out those tokens and start to stake, it allows the APY to stay where it is.
Yeah.
Because when it's very close to 100% and a lot of people come in, well, the APY is going to go down fast. This is the reason why stupid shit like, the BlockFis and the whatever, when they get so much money, their yield just dies. But when you have so much more float to work with, when adoption comes in and they start sucking in the tokens, because there's so many of it, it still allow the ratio of the new user versus the existing user to maintain that ratio, so there's meat on the bone for the new guy and the old guy. So it dynamically moves. It's just kind of like you own your company in the beginning, the Jeff Bezos, whatever, you own 100% of it. And as you grow the company bigger and bigger, you own less and less of the company to allow new people to come in and eat as well. But the little bit that you have is still valuable at an exponential rate because the pie is getting bigger. So that's why the lower number is better than the bigger number, because it allows onboarding without diluting the value proposition. This is the reason why it's so genius. And to make it simple, just look at it like the APY. It literally, it's like fucking AI, just knowing that, all right, we're 38%, no matter what. Every now and then, when there's some shenanigans, emergency end state, all right, we get some 60%. Because hell yeah, why not for the day? But without penalty, we cruise control. And that's what Wells has the chart to show you. It literally stays there chilling. And then at some point, when the T-share becomes too expensive, then we're going to reach another epoch. And then at that point, get ready, because it's going to get even more stupid. For those who have the stake, that's the key. Go ahead.
What's crazy is that we'll never, ever see 3.69% APY, provided that the OA always keeps that much liquid. If he's holding 95.4% liquid, right? Even if every single user even if every user in the network staked 100% of their position, right? We're still getting insanely high APY because the percentage that's owned by users is so small.
Because he's maintaining the value proposition of the system. This is the reason why the bigger the OA gets, the more secure your APY become, because that 95% will never get staked, whatever that's liquid. Therefore, it will still do its role, which is going to serve as a function of your APY. And let me remind you, even if the global stat is telling you 38%, which is true, again, keyword global stat, there's people right now in the community that are earning 40, 45, 60, 65, 70% APY. Why? Because it's done by the share rate. The share rate is the one that's going to separate people. Oh, you're a long-term guy, you get more. The short-term guy, he gets less. So the global entry is going to show you 38%, but at the stake level, this is why longer pays better. And this is also why the earlier you stake, the better. And T-share preservation is so important, because there's an inner fight inside the pool. The pool advertised 38% for the new guy coming in, so he knows there's meat on the table. But those who are in the pool, those who play the game the more optimal way, are eating more of the pool than those who not. And again, because you're monetizing time. It's not because one is better than you. No, because one is decided to commit longer than you. Therefore, he gets paid more. So this is why it's so perfectly done. So everybody gets paid. And the more compliant you are to the true ethos of the system, the more you will benefit from the system. It's literally that simple. The cheat code is given to you. The question is, are you going to apply? Why do I always tell you guys? Knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge. You hear it. What are you going to do about it? That's what's going to dictate your APY.
Here's another
and the value proposition can only go up, really. Everything in HEX can only go up. It's insanely... It's just the genius behind it. The
supply gets even better too. So So now let's think about all the hex that's owned by users, right? I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we're talking, okay, so 4%, 4.6% of all hex in circulation is owned by users, roughly 26 point whatever billion, right? Well, there's a few things that are happening. One, the origin address is getting larger. I literally see coins dropping into that coffer every single day as some of the emergency ends, as you pointed out. Number two, PulseChain sacrifice address is getting larger because people sacrifice hex. So it's not burning the hex, it's just going into diamond hands that never sells, and that gives us a higher market cap, by the way. But then,
and a better future APY.
Correct. And then when you just consider all of the addresses that are owned by users, out of the 26 billion or so, or 26.2 or whatever it is, about 20 billion of those tokens sit in addresses that have equal balances. Meaning, if you look at the previous balance and compare it to the available balance, about 20 billion are exactly the same to like 4 or 5 decimal places, which suggests.
Let's do quick math on that for people to understand. It's insane, dude. This is the math on that, right? 20 billion. 1% of 20 billion is 200 million, right? And then if I were to just do like low ball 3.69, right? Dynamically over the year, right? That means that right now the run rate, it's some stupid number like almost 700 billion hex just diluted every day, paid to the staker class. That's insane. That's like this is the fucking give and trade. You feel me?
Can you explain a little bit more about what you just said about those addresses? I'm not sure I understand yet. So the addresses hold the same amount of hex as each other?
All right, so let me give you a little backdrop. So first of all, the spreadsheet is publicly available. I post updates regularly. The spreadsheet does not update itself, by the way. Like, I literally have to go in there and click some buttons that hit update, and you're talking like almost 100,000 addresses that I'm dealing with, and it's not even all the addresses, and I just do it periodically. It doesn't happen all the time, but
thank you
post
for that.
Every once in a while.
For sure.
Yeah. No big deal.
Awesome.
The hardest part was building it. Clicking the update button, no big deal. Just let it run. but yeah. So anyway, when you can find that spreadsheet, by the way, by just searching Hex token supply in the Telegram chats, right? You'll find it like Hex trading chat. That's probably the best place to go for it. But anyway, when you go to the tab that says liabilities, those are all user-owned addresses.
Oh, we lost him. Internet.
Oh.
Yeah, but Maddie, quickly, what he was about to go to, because I watch this thing all the time, is basically those are just the sister address that just, again, they just sit there. They don't do anything. They got one-time transfer right after big payday. They just sit there. Nothing else is in there. No shit coins, no Ethereum, nothing. They just sit there, and their function is for the APY and the dilution. And they are the reason why we're getting the payout the way we're getting. Because the user token, if they play the game the right way, chances are going to stake because they want to earn the reward. And as they stake, those tokens are living circulation. Therefore, they actually, quote unquote, hurting the APY potential because those tokens are getting burned. They're living circulation. Because they're living circulation, they don't get accounted for the next day, 3.69 daily payout. So the fact that OA addresses increases is good because it counterbalances for adoption. Because adoption comes in, buys token, stake token for years, right? Our second average keeps going up higher and higher, which means more hex is being staked. This is another math that's important. It's counterintuitive. The percentage stake, I'm going to say this slow. The percentage stake of hex is trending down because inflation is rising, but the number of hex being staked is actually going up faster and faster. So more hex as a token are getting staked, but the ratio is showing you 9 point whatever and trending down because the pie is getting bigger. But make no mistake, it's getting stronger and stronger because more people are using the system the right way, staking, and the other tokens that make the ratio go lower are going into OA addresses and basically never to be seen because their function, once again, is to protect the APY, to make sure the value proposition is still there, aka leaving the meat on the bone. But that's why people don't understand how scarce HEX become, because if those tokens are not going anywhere because their function is the APY, if they create inflation that's only paid to the stakers, and the stakers average length is going up, which means it's going to diamond hands, and the regular HEX that's available for user are being staked more and more and being bought every time there's a dip, what do you think is going to happen, right? This is just what the math is. And he's back. Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry, man. It logged me out.
I backed you up. So
yeah. Thanks. So sorry about that. But yeah, so these addresses, right? In the spreadsheet, you have a column that says previous balance and available balance. And so what I do is I have an update button. You can't really get access to the update button because of API keys. But anyway, I'll click the update button, and what it does is it brings in it brings in the most current balance from each of these addresses by clicking this button. It's a script that Crispy in the community helped me, Crispy wrote for me to help me with the spreadsheet. But anyway.
Oh, nice.
So what it'll do is I set up a couple of inequality columns in the spreadsheet, and it simply asks the question, is the available balance greater than the previous balance? And then returns a true or false. And then another column asks, is it equal? And then it returns a true or false. So it's a kind of a quick way of like sorting through like 94,000 addresses to see who has a higher balance, who has a lower balance, and who has an equal balance. So when I'm talking about the equal balance, what I'm suggesting or what I'm saying is that the previous balance equals the available balance to many decimal places, meaning it doesn't increase or decrease. It's exactly equal.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So it suggests, I haven't looked at all the addresses, but a preliminary assessment of that would be, or at least an assumption would be, that those addresses, there's actually no activity in those addresses where it's changing like the balance.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that's about
there's another really obvious thing about that I keep forgetting to say. We talked about how a few episodes back the question came up, well, why might the OA choose to disseminate the funds throughout so many addresses? And I mentioned the attack vector thing and all that, but the obvious thing that I always forget to say when that topic comes up is that there's all this crazy fear on the outsiders that I think, oh, but what if the OA does dump it all, one day? Well, firstly, if there's just 1,000 addresses and they have no ETH in them at the moment, which is new news to me, then it's obvious that the gas price, not to mention the length of time it would take to do it all, but the gas price for dumping that hex would be 1,000 times more than it would have been if it was in a single address. And that's only if the OA criminal dude was to transfer exactly the right amount of ETH to transfer that stuff out again. And that never works, right? You've always got to put a bit more in. So it's a minimum of 1,000 times more gas to even just do the thing.
Wow.
And there's no getting around it.
That's a great point.
Nope.
Great point. Gunter, I just thought of something crazy. Oh my God. We have on Quan game. My brain is going crazy. I just got a new tab for you that you have to create for us. It's gonna be great. To show the value proposition. We'll call it the value of the cuffer. Kind of like we love to pioneer new words, like magic carpet ride, whatever. So we'll call it the value of the cuffer, or the cuffer incentive. It goes like this. You're gonna get it. We need to quantify like daily the value of those dormant HEX, right? Because we know they're not coming back to circulation, which also means they're not going to get staked. They just sit there. And then we'll multiply that by a ratio of 3.69. And it'll be like, this is the value of the payout in HEX annualized. That is going to be so gangster. It's going to be, I can present this to all my banker friends. This is the value of what you're sharing as a staker class. That is, and it's dynamic, so we can track that as a value proposition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it will. I'd like to see what you put together with that.
That would be great. So basically, the math should just be, we're tracking all the dormant address, we sum up all that HEX, and then we'll multiply by 3.69, And then just to make it like user friendly, we're not going to put any dollar amount. We're just going to quantify in hex. You feel me? So we'll say no matter what, because we can't control what the user is going to do, right? They might stake, they might not stake, but we know what the dormant address does, right? So as a lower bound, we're going to say the value of the 3.69 inflation, the payout, because remember, it's proof of stake, right? You got to show the new user, you get a chance to be in this pool, and this is the value of the pool. Make sense? And we can quantify that value as a lower bound by saying, because those addresses are dormant, those hexes are not going anywhere and they will never be staked. Therefore, we can assume that this many billion hex times the 3.69 is the value of the hex payout annualized.
Yeah, fair enough.
Does that make sense?
There's a ratio against the
Oh,
total
I'm sorry
supply.
Chat, this is going to be good. And once I'll present
my mind, but
basically,
I trust you.
basically, what I'm saying is this is the guarantee. Yes, I used the word guarantee value of the cover. Because those hex are not moving. The total number keeps going up. They keep going up. That's a fact. This coin game.
Yes.
It's a fact. They're not moving. They're not getting staked. The value constantly goes up. Gonta could track it. We can easily track it and do update. And then we just multiply it by 3.69 because technically that's the daily value of the inflation.
Well,
And
what
we
you
can
could
start
do, check it out. What you could do is just take the daily APY that you get on go.hex.com, and that's your daily inflation.
That is true, but that comes with a penalty too. I want to show it like.
Oh, you just want the flat?
You're absolutely right. You're
The
absolutely
minimum
right.
base rate, yeah.
Yes, because the day payout is basically everything with the
I think that
penalty.
number is 0.0955 or something like that. I think that's the number.
Yeah, because I think last time I saw there was almost a day there was like no penalty, and that was very random. But we were close to like 60 million. I know it's trend around 60 to 61 million per day. Hex.
Yeah, around 60, 63 on the high side.
We can literally I just thought about it. We can track it because now we can say this is the guaranteed payout before emergency penalty. And then you can present it like no matter what, exactly baseline. No matter what, nobody EES. Because as hex become more and more valuable, make no mistake, there's going to be less emergency and stake because people are going to be less stupid. I mean, they should, but then again, it's an IQ test.
I think it's going to be the opposite, bro.
No, me too. I think
a lot more.
But you get what I'm saying, right? We can show the guarantee value proposition and wealth. We can add that to one of your chart.
It's already there. It's that daily payout.
We'll call it the guaranteed payout, and it's in hex. So nobody can come and say, "Oh, it's you can't put dollar amount, blah blah blah." No, bitch, we're talking in hex. So
there's speaking to what Wales just said, there's going to be so many people. Hell, I might even be one of them. God help me. Who put like $1,000 into an address in there, and they're like, "Yeah, man, I'm holding for 15 years. I'm staked. And at some point, I'm going to look in there, and I'm going to say, well, if I emergency end stake this, and I pay all the penalties, and I'm not even halfway through yet, and I do all the math very carefully, I'm still going to get a couple mil out, and I'm not getting any younger." And so it's going to be, that's where the graphene hands thing comes in.
This is a solid point. Think about it. It's a solid point you're making. When the price of hex is $30, and it will be, that's not even a ceiling. That's like a stepping stone. When the price of hex is $30, and you have 1 million tokens that are liquid, a million tokens that are staked, and it's worth $30 million, I am willing to bet that many people would be willing to eat a $15 million penalty.
Not me. Fuck that. The greed person in me will now let me. Cream, you're losing 15 mil? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Now, there's so many people that'd be willing to eat a $15 million penalty to get access to $15 million today.
Yeah.